For years, I thought the ring would be the proof. Not love. Not loyalty. Not the quiet way he showed up for me every single day. A ring. That small circle became the place where I poured every fear I was too embarrassed to say out loud. I was 24 when I first admitted it. Not to my family. Not to my friends. Not even fully to him. I admitted it to strangers online, because sometimes it feels safer to confess your ugliest little panic to people who will never see your face. My boyfriend and I had been together for 3.5 years. 3.5 years of shared rooms, shared bills, shared groceries, shared sleepy mornings, shared futures we kept speaking into existence. We had moved in together more than 2 years before. By then, our lives were not separate lines running beside each other. They were tangled, woven, difficult to pull apart without tearing something. He was my best friend. And I know people say that casually, the way they say they are obsessed with a coffee order or dying over a TV show. But I meant it in the serious way. The quiet way. The kind of best friend who knows what your silence means before you do. The kind of person who can make a normal Tuesday feel like a place you want to live in. We worked well together. We had built each other into better people, not with some dramatic speech or perfect movie moment, but in the ordinary, stubborn ways real love does its work. He had seen me scared. He had seen me tired. He had seen me when my body felt like a betrayal. And he stayed. He stayed so naturally that I sometimes forgot staying was a choice. After only a month of dating, he told me he wanted me to meet his parents. That mattered. He had never introduced a girlfriend to his family before. So when he brought me into that part of his life, I treated it like a door opening. Not a small one. A real one. And then his family became part of my world too. I loved them. They loved me. At least, it felt that way. There were dinners, conversations, birthdays, familiar kitchens, inside jokes. All those soft domestic proofs that a relationship is becoming more than two people saying nice things to each other. He told me he knew we had a future from the first day we met. I believed him. Mostly. That was the problem. Mostly is a dangerous word when your fear wants certainty. Mostly gives anxiety a crack to slip through. And mine did. Because we had talked about marriage for years. Not once. Not vaguely. Years. We both agreed we wanted to marry each other. We both talked about forever like it was not a fantasy, but a destination. And yet, there was no proposal. No ring. No moment where he took my hand and made the promise visible. I knew, technically, that a ring was not a marriage. I knew a diamond was not a personality test. I knew jewelry could not stop someone from leaving, lying, changing, or falling out of love. I knew all of that. But knowing something in your head does not always calm the creature pacing inside your chest. And mine was pacing. Every engagement announcement felt like a tiny door closing. Every smiling photo of a girl holding up her hand made me feel foolish for wanting what she had. Friends who had dated for less time were getting engaged. Couples who seemed newer, shakier, less certain, were picking venues and flowers and hashtags. And there I was, living with the man I loved, sharing a life that already looked like commitment from the outside, but still being asked the same question at family gatherings. So, when is he going to propose? People asked it with smiles, with teasing voices, with that little sparkle of curiosity that sounds harmless until it follows you home. They did not see what the question did to me. They did not see me standing in the bathroom afterward, washing my hands too long, trying to convince myself I was not humiliated. They did not see me scrolling through engagement photos in bed while he slept beside me, wondering why their lives had reached the checkpoint and mine had not. I hated that I compared. I hated that I cared. I hated that I could be so loved and still feel like I was waiting outside some locked room. When I finally brought it up, he did not dismiss me. That might have been easier, in a strange way. If he had been cold, I could have pointed to the coldness. If he had been cruel, I could have named the cruelty. But he was kind. He told me we should get married when I graduated college. And graduation was not far away. I knew that. I was a full-time student with a part-time job. He had already graduated. He had a career. He had a decent salary. And he paid most of our rent and bills, because he could, and because I was still trying to get through school. He was carrying more than his half. I knew that too. But I was not asking to plan a wedding immediately. At least, that was how I justified it. I only wanted to be engaged. To me, engagement was not the party. It was not the dress. It was not the catering, the seating chart, the cake tasting, the deposit on a venue. It was the promise. A ring meant, I choose you. And I am not just saying it at midnight in our apartment where no one else can hear. I choose you publicly. I choose you seriously. I choose you in a way the world recognizes. He told me he did promise. He said we would get married. He said financially, it was not a good time. And that sentence stayed with me like a pebble in my shoe. Because I knew he had money. Not endless money. Not private island money. But enough, I thought, for a simple ring. He knew I liked simple jewelry. I did not need something huge or glittering or expensive. I did not want to bankrupt him. I did not want him to suffer for a symbol. I just wanted the symbol. And once I wanted it, I could not stop seeing its absence. It sat between us at dinner. It followed us to the grocery store. It hovered when he kissed my forehead. It was there when he brought me candy just because he knew I liked it. It was there when he held me through medical appointments and bad days. It was there when he told me not to compare us to anyone else. He said he knew us. He knew we would get married. And I wanted to believe him without needing more. But there was a question under the question. It was not only, why has he not proposed? It was, can I trust happiness before it has a title? That question made me feel ashamed. Because from the outside, I knew how it sounded. Here was a man who loved me. A man who supported me. A man who had opened his family to me, shared his home with me, and built a future with me in practical, daily ways. And there I was, aching over a ring. I could almost hear the judgment before anyone said it. Ungrateful, immature, jealous, insecure. And maybe I was all of those things. But fear does not usually arrive wearing a name tag that says insecurity. It arrives disguised as logic. It tells you it is protecting you. It tells you that if you do not demand certainty now, you will wake up 10 years later beside someone who never meant what he said. It tells you other women are chosen in ways you are not. It tells you your patience is actually denial. It tells you love without proof is a trick. And my fear had more than one root. It was not just engagement photos. It was not just friends. It was not just nosy relatives or men who brushed off the word boyfriend like it was temporary, flimsy, unserious. It was my parents. My parents had me later in life. I never knew my grandparents the way other people did. That absence had shaped something in me. A longing, maybe. A grief for relationships I never got to have. I wanted my children to know my parents. I wanted my mom and dad to become grandparents while they still had the energy and health to enjoy it. I wanted wedding photos with them in the frame. I wanted my mother to see me walk into whatever version of married life I would build. I wanted my father there too. And beneath all of that was a deeper, quieter terror. My health. I had dealt with cervical cancer. Even saying that felt heavy. There are certain words that change the temperature of a room. Cancer is one of them. It takes normal life and puts a shadow over it. Even after treatment, even after surgery, even when people tell you to stay hopeful, your body becomes a place you no longer fully trust. My doctor had told me I had a higher risk of having a premature baby. So when people said, you are only 24, you have so much time, I heard them. But I also heard the clock in my own head. Not a rational clock. Not always a fair clock. But loud. Loud enough that it made waiting feel dangerous. Loud enough that it made a proposal feel less like romance and more like safety. I wanted children someday. I wanted marriage. I wanted time. And because I could not control illness, or aging parents, or the future, I focused on the one thing I thought I could ask for. A ring. Just that. A tangible promise. I wrote online because I did not know how to untangle the fear from the want. I asked if I was being ridiculous. I asked strangers whether needing a ring to feel fully secure meant something was wrong with me. And the answers came quickly. Some were gentle. Some were sharp enough to leave a mark. Some people told me to breathe. Some told me I was creating a problem where there was not one. Some reminded me that he lived with me, loved me, supported me, encouraged me, and showed commitment in ways far more expensive than a ring. Some asked what a ring would actually do, besides show other people something. That one stung. Because part of me knew there was truth in it. Not the whole truth, but enough. Others were harsher. They said I was sulking. They said I needed to slow down. They said I was comparing my relationship to other people's highlight reels. They said anxiety could kill a good relationship if I kept feeding it. They told me to look at it from his side. And that was the part one had avoided. His side. From his side. He had already promised me marriage. He had already built a life with me. He was paying most of our expenses while I was still in school. He had given me a timeline, after graduation. He was showing love not by kneeling, but by working, by waiting, by trying to be responsible. And maybe, from where he stood, my urgency did not look like romance. Maybe it looked like pressure. Maybe it looked like I valued the announcement more than the life. Maybe it hurt him to hear that everything he was doing still did not feel like enough. That thought softened something in me. Not instantly. I wish growth happened like a switch, but it does not. It happens more like fog lifting. Slowly. Unevenly. A patch of road appears, then disappears, then appears again. I responded to people. I admitted that maybe it was me. That my insecurities were getting the best of me. That I was letting friends and family get into my head. That I really did love him. That I could not picture myself with anyone else. That he had been there through my cancer scare. That he had stayed by my side. That I was still waiting to find out whether I was cancer-free after surgery. That my parents really had been older when they had me. And that my fear about timing was not invented out of nothing. But still, my marriage could not be built around panic. That was the truth I did not want and desperately needed. I could not take every fear about illness, every grief about grandparents, every awkward comment from relatives, every engagement photo on social media, and place it in his hands like a bill he owed. Love can hold fear, but it cannot become the servant of it. So I tried to breathe. I tried to listen. I tried to see the life in front of me instead of only the ring that was not there. And in the months that followed, nothing dramatic changed. There was no sudden cinematic transformation. No beam of sunlight breaking through clouds while I became instantly wise. I still had anxious days. I still noticed rings. I still felt that pinch when another friend posted a proposal. But I began to catch myself earlier. I began to ask a different question. Not, why hasn't he proved it yet? But, what has he already shown me? The answer was everywhere. It was in the rent he paid without making me feel small. It was in the way he believed in my education. It was in the fact that he did not treat my medical history like baggage. It was in the way he folded me into his family. It was in the small gifts, the candy, the care, the daily evidence. It was in the fact that when I was afraid, he did not run from the version of me that fear created. Even when I was not easy, even when I repeated myself, even when I needed reassurance he had already given, he stayed. And slowly, I began to understand that his timeline was not necessarily hesitation. Maybe it was devotion with a budget. Maybe it was love trying to be wise. Maybe he did not want to begin our marriage under the pressure of my unfinished school, my health anxiety, our finances, and everyone else's expectations. Maybe he wanted to wait until I had crossed one finish line before asking me to step toward another. At the time, I did not know that. I could only guess. That is one of the hardest parts of loving someone. You are always interpreting. A delay can look like doubt. Silence can look like distance. Caution can look like rejection. And if you already have a wound, your mind will press every mystery against it until it hurts. But he was not mysterious because he was cruel. He was quiet because he had a plan. I just did not know it yet. College moved toward its end. Not elegantly. Not easily. It came with assignments, deadlines, stress, and the strange emotional wobble of becoming a person you once imagined from far away. Graduation had always sounded like a clean border. Before and after. Student and adult. Waiting and arrival. But when it came closer, it felt less like a finish line and more like standing at the edge of an enormous room with the lights off. I was proud. I was tired. I was scared. And he was there. Still there. After I graduated, life took on a slightly different rhythm. There was more space. Not endless space, but enough to feel a shift. Enough for him to suggest a hike. A hike. Nothing about that word should have made my heart notice. We had gone on hikes before. We had shared plenty of ordinary plans. But this one felt different. Not because he said anything obvious. He did not announce that it was special. He did not act like a man carrying a secret in neon lights. But I knew the place. It was the same place we had gone early in our relationship. One of those dates that becomes bigger in memory because something in you knew, even then, that it mattered. The first time we went there, it had felt almost unreal. There was a lake. Beautiful in the way lakes can be when the world around them gets quiet enough to let them speak. Trees around the edges. Sky on the water. That strange stillness that makes you lower your voice without knowing why. We had stood there together, wrapped in one of those almost moments young love is full of. He held me. I thought he was going to kiss me. Everything in the scene seemed to lean toward it. The water. The silence. His arms around me. My own heart making far too much noise. But he did not kiss me. He just held me. And later, I teased him for it. Not cruelly. It became one of those little stories couples collect and polish over time. Remember when you had the perfect chance and did nothing? I kissed him first eventually. But I never let him forget that lake. Never let him forget that beautiful, ridiculous pause where he wanted to kiss me and somehow did not. He confessed later that he had wanted to. More than anything, he said. He just had not been sure I wanted him to. That was him. Careful. Tender. Sometimes too cautious for his own good. A man who would rather miss the perfect moment than take something I had not clearly offered. At 24, when I was anxious and impatient, I did not always see the beauty in that kind of restraint. I wanted certainty. He moved with care. Those are not always the same rhythm. So when he took me back to that hike 4 years later, part of me noticed the echo. The path. The air. The memory of our younger selves walking there. Not yet knowing how much life would happen between then and now. Not yet knowing about shared apartments. Or medical scares. Or arguments. Or Reddit strangers. Or the ache of waiting. We walked. And I remember the feeling of being there with him again, after everything. Not starting over. Returning. There is a difference. Starting over pretends the past did not happen. Returning brings the past with it, and says, look. We made it through. The lake came into view. That same beautiful place. That same quiet witness. And I did not know, not fully, that my life was about to split into before and after. He brought me to the spot. The spot where he had held me all those years ago. The spot where I had thought he would kiss me. The spot I had turned into a joke because sometimes tenderness is too vulnerable to leave untouched. And then he told me something I had not known. He told me that was when he first knew he loved me. There. At the lake. In the almost kiss. In the quiet. In the careful holding back. The moment I had teased him about for years had not been empty. It had not been hesitation in the way I imagined hesitation. It had been full. Overflowing, even. He had been standing there with more feeling than he knew what to do with. And I had spent years thinking of it as the moment he missed. Then, he got down on one knee. For a second. The whole world narrowed. Not in the dramatic movie way, where violins rise and the camera spins. There was no music. Just air. Just earth. Just the small sounds of a place that had been holding our story longer than I realized. The scrape of movement. The hush of trees. My own breath forgetting how to behave. And him. The man I had loved. Doubted. Pressured. Trusted. Feared losing. And chosen again. There he was. Kneeling in front of me with the promise I had once thought I needed to survive. And the strangest thing happened. The ring mattered. Of course it mattered. I will not pretend it did not. But in that moment, it was not the ring that overwhelmed me. It was the timeline I could suddenly see from his side. While I had been worrying, he had been planning. While I had been measuring silence, he had been waiting for the right chapter. While I had been afraid the delay meant he was unsure, he had been carrying the proposal back to the place where he first knew. That realization hit harder than the sparkle, because it meant his love had not been absent. It had been patient. It had been deliberate. It had been walking toward me at a pace I did not understand. And when the moment finally came, I did not respond like the composed woman I might have imagined. I did not give some graceful yes through shining tears. I kissed him. I just kissed him. All that waiting, all that anxiety, all those nights wondering whether I was foolish for wanting this, and when he finally asked, my body answered before my mouth did. I kissed him so completely that I forgot the actual question required an answer. He had to ask me, with that perfect mix of love and humor, whether I was going to marry him or not. And of course I said yes. Of course. There are yes that feel like decisions. This one felt like recognizing where I had already been going. We got married about a year later. Not instantly. Not in a rush fueled by panic. A year later. A steadier time. A better time. The kind of timing I had not trusted when I was still looking at everyone else's life and wondering why mine was not following the same script. And when I look back now, I can see the younger version of me with more compassion than embarrassment. She was not a villain. She was scared. She was 24 and carrying more than she knew how to carry. She was watching her friends move into milestones and wondering whether she was being left behind. She was thinking about parents aging. She was thinking about babies she had not had yet. She was thinking about a body that had frightened her. She was thinking about cancer, and surgery, and doctors, and premature birth risks, and the terrifying possibility that time might not be as generous to her as everyone insisted. She wanted a promise she could touch. And maybe that was not ridiculous. But she also needed to learn that a promise can exist before it becomes jewelry. It can exist in sacrifice, in rent, in rides to appointments, in family introductions, in patience, in the way someone says, finish school first, not because they are avoiding you, but because they believe in the rest of your life too. That was the lesson. Not that wanting engagement was wrong. Not that rings are meaningless. They are not. Symbols matter because humans are built to need shape around feeling. We make ceremonies. We wear bands. We keep photographs. We save ticket stubs from first dates and remember the lakes where someone almost kissed us. The symbol mattered. But it was never supposed to replace the substance. And for a while, I had let the missing symbol make me suspicious of the substance. That is the part one would tell my younger self if I could sit beside her now. I would not scold her. She had enough strangers do that. I would sit close. I would let her cry. Then I would tell her to look carefully at the man in front of her. Not the fantasy man. Not the men in engagement posts. Not the men in other people's stories. Him. The one buying groceries. The one asking about her classes. The one checking on her health. The one opening his family to her. The one saying not yet, but not saying no. Because not yet and no can sound similar when you are afraid. But they are not the same. They are not the same at all. The year after our wedding, we celebrated our first anniversary. 1 year married. And I was happy. Not in the loud, perfect, social media caption way. Happy in the deep way. The kind of happy that has weather inside it. The kind that knows the relationship did not become meaningful because of the wedding day. The wedding day gave it a frame. A beautiful frame. But the picture had been forming long before. In that first month when he wanted me to meet his parents. In the apartment where we learned how to live together. In the arguments where I had to face my own anxiety. In the medical fear he walked through with me. In the lake where he once held me and said nothing because he was too careful to assume. In the same lake where he later asked me to marry him. The promise had been there. I just needed time to recognize its handwriting. Sometimes, the thing you are waiting for is real. And sometimes, your waiting makes it harder to see what is already real. That is the strange, tender contradiction I learned. I had wanted proof that he was committed. But commitment had not been hiding. It had been embarrassingly visible. So visible that strangers could point it out from a few paragraphs online. They could see it in the roof over my head. In the fact that he was financially supporting me while I finished school. In the way he talked about our future. In the way he knew we would marry, but wanted the timing to make sense. I had been standing too close to my own fear to see the full shape of my life. And fear is like that. It presses your face against one small detail until the rest of the room disappears. No ring. No proposal. No public promise. No proof. But step back. And there was proof everywhere. I do not think love asks us never to need reassurance. That would be unfair. We are human. We get scared. We carry old stories, family wounds, medical histories, timelines, cultural expectations, and the sharp little comments people toss at us without knowing where they land. But love does ask us to learn the difference between reassurance and control, between communicating a need and demanding that someone soothe every fear on our schedule, between wanting a future and trying to force tomorrow to arrive early because today feels uncertain. I did not know that then. I was learning. Messily. Publicly, unfortunately. But learning. And maybe that is why the update mattered so much. Because people expected disaster. When they saw the phrase "my boyfriend" at the time, some hearts dropped. They thought the story had turned. They thought he had left, or proposed to someone else, or proved that every anxious thought I had was right. But no. The twist was gentler. The twist was that love had been doing its quiet work all along. He had planned the proposal. He had remembered the lake. He had waited until after graduation. He had chosen a place that belonged to us, not to anyone else's timeline. He had taken a memory I teased him about and revealed that, to him, it had always been sacred. That is the kind of romance anxiety almost made me miss. Not because anxiety would have stopped the proposal from happening. Maybe it would not have. But it could have poisoned the waiting. It could have made me treat his patience like neglect. It could have made me punish him for not moving at the speed of my fear. It could have taken a good love and made it feel unsafe, simply because it did not perform certainty in the form I wanted. I am grateful it did not. I am grateful for the tough love that made me look at myself. I am grateful for the softer voices too, the ones that reminded me that a ring can matter without becoming the entire measure of devotion. I am grateful I finished school before wedding planning swallowed my life. I am grateful he waited. I am grateful he knew me well enough to choose that lake. And I am grateful that when the moment came, I forgot to say yes. Because somehow, that feels right. After all those months of overthinking, the answer came out of me without words first. A kiss. A yes before yes. The body knowing before the anxious mind could organize a response. There is a version of the story where I would have told you the ring solved everything. That the moment he proposed, every fear vanished forever. But that would not be honest. Marriage does not cure anxiety. A ring does not make a person immune to comparison. A wedding does not erase medical fears or family timelines or the ache of wanting life to unfold gently. What changed was not that I became fearless. What changed was that I learned not to mistake fear for truth. Fear can be loud and still be wrong. Fear can sound intelligent and still be guessing. Fear can build an entire courtroom inside your head and still have no evidence strong enough to convict the person who loves you. He loved me. He had loved me. He was loving me. And when he finally placed that promise in my hand, it did not create the future from nothing. It illuminated the future we had already been building. That is what I understand now. A proposal is a beautiful moment, but a marriage is made of all the moments before and after it. The promises spoken quietly, the bills paid, the illnesses endured, the boring errands, the old jokes, the patience, the lake, the almost kiss, the return, the knee in the dirt, the forgotten yes, the laughter after the tears. The first anniversary, when you look back and realize the story was not about a man refusing to promise. It was about a woman learning how many forms a promise can take. And it was about a man who had been carrying the promise carefully the whole time, waiting for the right moment to let her see it shine.